3805 Team Building Continuation, Session 4B. As we mentioned before about groups, we know that groups have to develop. According to Frisk and Frisk in 2005, they state that there are three phases for group development. The first is orientation, where members seek acceptance, their anxiety runs a little high, and usually there's a little uncertainty and insecurity. When you first come together and you meet someone, pretty much the same thing. So the orientation phase is number one. The second phase is they become a little bit more comfortable. They've met a couple of times. They begin to realize how people's different personalities, how they come together. Then they'll begin to do problem solving. And then their secondary tension might develop. And then there's tertiary tension, where there's maybe a little struggle for power that comes together. And then the last stage, according to Frisk and Frisk, is the termination stage, where you're able to evaluate and summarize the progress that you've made. However, according to Crenshaw in 2003, he mentions a fourth stage. They mention a fourth stage is mentioned, and that's the mature stage. He said this is when you're sandwiched between the working and the termination stage, where there's acceptance and there's openness and the sense of we is developed. So the group development comes along. However, the one that's pretty much common that you might hear about are 6 stages from Smith and Huckel. They state that there's orientation, where you come together and you meet, and there is that anxiety. You don't really know each other, but you're getting to know each other. And then there's a forming period where it's like the honeymoon period, where everything is nice and you're trying to understand your colleague and listening. That active listening process takes place. And then the storming process, where you've met now a couple of times and you realize that there's different personalities in this group. And maybe you dislike the way some are sharing their ideas. So there's a little tension there, so a little stormy period. But you're able to brainstorm and thrash it out, and then the norming period becomes the following stage. And then after that norming period takes place, where you begin to accept and respect, then you're able to perform and get the decisions made, and then the terminating is there, where you're able to say goodbye and has a positive attitude for all the work that you've accomplished. So what is the effectiveness of the groups? You have to be committed, number one, because you want to be able to attain that goal. You want the output. Members have to give up their self-interest. The leadership styles will develop, and you remember there's 3 different ones, but there'll be a different way for each leader to influence to be able to accomplish the goals. Decision-making methods, you want them to be effective decisions when they're made, so the group will have to listen to the ideas. Problem solving can take place once these ideas are on the table. The group will determine which decision method to adopt, and then the expertise of the group really should be used. Time is used effectively, the atmosphere remains positive, members feel committed, and usually members feel satisfied. So there's several methods in which to aid in decisions. One is brainstorming. That is, each one is able to present their ideas, and then maybe someone could piggyback on some of those ideas, because there will be a level of trust that will be developed. There's something called the normal group technique, where there's maybe when there's a little conflict in the group, there may be an alternative between individuals and group members. So what happens in this case, they may write their ideas down, and through a round-robin process, the ideas are shared. Therefore, no one really knows who's saying anything. And there's another technique called the Delphi technique, where decisions are usually by consensus, where the data will be obtained through an interview, participants remain anonymous, and lack any type of peer pressure. So those are 2 concepts that you might want to use when you're doing this group process if you feel that you're not moving ahead because of some little anxiety there. And then the members also have to realize that there are individual roles that have to take place. I mean, you have to do some work sometimes outside. Tasks have to be completed. Building and maintaining these roles have to take place. So dysfunctional areas have to be really discussed and then, compromised, dealt with, so that you can move on. So your individual role is maybe task, maintenance, or building a role, and being able to understand dysfunctional activity. And the group roles, is to maintain continuity, cohesiveness, and stability, and with the task to provide stimulus for achievement to get these group roles going. Group maintenance serve human needs for recognition and worth, and group dysfunction delays or disrupt achieving the goal. In your text, you will find that there's an ideal interaction pattern of small groups. You can see here where each member interacts with other members. This is truly ideal. Sometimes you don't see this until almost the forming period takes place, where you can see that everyone is speaking to each individual. So you have a source receiver, and each one is receiving something at one time. This means that everyone is participating. And this one, this sociogram, indicates the flow of the verbal communication when a group during a specific period notes that the 5 questions or comments calling for a response were really directed at the leader. So you wonder, what type of leader is this? Which is not a bad thing. It just means that they all feel that they should fill those questions to the leaders or looking for some type of answers. So member behaviors, there has to be cohesiveness. There has to be a sense of we. The group must feel satisfied without any kind of disintegration. The power has to be the ability to influence one another in some way or the ability to do something. We should tell some of this to our Congress, right?